Welcome to my channel. My name is Lisa Alastuey, and on this channel, you will find a variety of inspirational and informational videos. Today, I am joined by Jake Zweig, who is a former U.S. Navy SEAL, college football athlete and coach, and entrepreneur. Jake is known for his distinguished military service and his continued work as a mentor and advocate for veterans. His diverse background blends military discipline, competitive sports, and a commitment to leadership and personal development. Welcome, Jake.
Hey, Ash, how you doing, Lisa?
Doing good. Thank you so much for coming on my channel today. I'm super excited to talk to you about a number of things.
Let's roll.
Okay, so before we get into the Navy SEALs, is there anything
hmm
else that you would like to add to your bio background?
I'm raising three boys, and so that literally is the focus of my life. I'm trying to stay married. We had an anniversary on the 18th, and my wife informed me that every day until next March 18th is a day closer to 20 years. So I'm really lucky. I got the best wife in the world, and I'm trying to do my best to raise three kids. So
Amazing. Congratulations. That is a rarity in today's society. So quite the accomplishment. I would definitely put that on a personal bio.
absolutely.
Mhm.
I'm lucky. I'm lucky. Let's be honest. I got the best wife in the
Awesome,
world.
awesome. Okay, so let me talk to you first about becoming a Navy SEAL. And through my research, only about 1 to 2% of Navy SEALs are of African American um, heritage. And so, can you share with me your thoughts on what drove you to become a Navy SEAL and then your
Ooh.
experience as one?
Okay, so real quick, I don't think it can be 1%.
Okay.
There's 7,000. Oh no, you're about right. There's 7,000 SEALs ever, 7,500, maybe, yeah, something like that. And there is roughly 100 African Americans to date. So it's a little bit it's a very rare air. I know you saw the video with me and the 25 on stage. Maybe the most inspirational thing I've ever done was just to be part of that group. So the SEAL story is pretty simple. I grew up on Fort Lewis, Washington, and I grew up wanting to be an Army Ranger and a Green Beret. I grew up with a bunch of military people. So all of my best friends are E9s. Their dads are E9s in the Army, sergeant majors. We had two regimental sergeant majors. So that means the head enlisted guy over like 4,000 people. And so I grew up around the military, even though my dad didn't serve. My grandfather served in World War II, but he was just a lookout at Port Angeles, and that's how he met my grandmother. So I grew up in the woods of South Fort Lewis, and I wore camouflage to school probably three times a week. It wasn't uncommon for me to wear camouflage paint to school in middle school. The A team was on. I wanted to be B.A. Baracus, so I had a B.A. Baracus haircut for probably about 3 or 4 years through middle school, first year of high school. And then, obviously I transitioned. I was heavy in sports in middle school. I was also a big science whiz. The big driving factor behind that was I couldn't read. So I focused on stuff that I could do real well in, which was math and science. And, I got to high school and I had a couple, really big losing moments as a freshman and sophomore in wrestling and football. And then, I just kind of dedicated myself to athletics and some schoolwork. I did well in school, but I didn't apply myself. So, um, I had a chance. I got into the Naval Academy as a freshman in high school. I got into West Point as a sophomore in high school. I got a full scholarship to University of Washington's engineering department in the eighth grade. And I literally picked the Naval Academy because it has sailboats on the cover. So one of the big things that we try to do, like I'm probably working with about 20 kids that are going to go to the service academy this year. We try to make sure they understand what they're getting into. Um, when I tell you I had no idea, I showed up the first day and a guy came in my room and was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Man, I'm trying to figure out what all this screaming's going on about. I'm supposed to be at college, man." And he was like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, it's supposed to be at college." And he goes, "No, you joined the military. You joined the military today. You're going to the Naval Academy. It's a military school." And I was like, "No, it's college. Like I'm going to college first, then I'm joining the military. So like I had a huge disconnect about where I was going to college and kind of what it was. So that maybe like 3 or 4 days later, we had Jim Galladay, the first Navy SEAL to graduate from the Naval Academy, and he was on the airfield at Padilla when he got shot up, and he got a Bronze Star with V. And I was like, yo, what does that dude do? And he was like, oh, them Navy SEALs, some commando dudes. And so I was like, well, I'm gonna go do that. I wanted to fly, but I get motion sickness pretty easily. And so I was like, yeah, I'm just going to go be a Navy SEAL. So that kind of started the journey to be a Navy SEAL. I played football at the Naval Academy. I wrestled. Um, Probably the hardest thing in the world is to wrestle in college. And go to the Naval Academy, go to take 15 to 18 to 22 credit hours a semester, and then have to do sports and all of that. So that was kind of the genesis of it. I was in a ton of trouble at the Naval Academy. So I ended up not getting a SEAL billet out of the Naval Academy. So I had to go drive ships for 2 years, which turned out to be absolutely phenomenal experience, great leadership. I got a qualification, so you had to get qualified before you can leave and go to another job. And I got the qualification, and roughly I got it done in 4 months, but they wouldn't give it to me in 4 months. So I had to wait another 2 months. I got it in 6 months, which was 6 months before anybody else in my class got it. And the normal timeline's 18 to 24 months. So then I went to SEAL training, and then the rest was history. But that's kind of how I got to SEAL training. I tell people I didn't necessarily want to be a Navy SEAL. I just want to do the job. And I would have been 1,000 times more happier being like an Army Ranger and a Green Beret than being a Navy SEAL. But I ended up being in the Navy, so I just went with what they had.
Okay, I have 100 questions.
Go
Just
ahead,
kidding.
shoot, go
So you
ahead.
kind of glossed over the part where you said you didn't know how to read. How did you overcome that and get through some of the selection processes?
So, pretty unique situation. I had a 4-star admiral and a 2-star general write me letters of recommendation. I already had a full scholarship to the University of Washington in the 8th grade because I'd won their science fair 3 years in a row and beat everybody, beat all the college kids, the high school kids. I beat everybody. So I turned that in with my athletic accomplishments at that time. I lost one wrestling match in 7th and 8th grade. I started on the football team 7th and 8th grade. So I had a bunch of accomplishments, and I turned all that in as a freshman, and I got accepted to Naval Academy. And then in my sophomore year, then West Point accepted me. So at the time, I had a 700 SAT with a 240 English. And then it was kind of funny. I transferred to the number 2 high school in the country, Charles Wright Academy in Washington State for athletics, believe that. And they wanted to put me in 7th grade English, but I have an edge about me. So I just told them that I'll go back to my public school. They were like, all right, never mind. So they put me in normal English, but I never went. Like I didn't go to normal English because they made fun of me the first day. So I never went back. I threw pottery. Pretty much, I threw pottery from 7 o'clock to noon every day. I went to calculus class and physics. So, but yeah, I didn't learn how to read. Very inspirational story. I'll tell you this one. So, uh, got to prep school. I wanted to go to prep school because I couldn't read. I got in directly to the Naval Academy, but I said, hey, I'm gonna go to prep school and learn how to read. The English teacher promptly wrote a letter to the Naval Academy stating that I was completely illiterate and I shouldn't be admitted, but I had a 3.0. I'm telling, math and science is my jig now. Like, so I was like, everybody else got like bad grades. I got a 3.0 with an F in English. So the Naval Academy, I was starting on the football team, and I lost one wrestling match at prep school that year. So Naval Academy's like, whatever, we don't care. Like, he's coming. So I went to Naval Academy. I got a 10 on my first paper. I turned in at the Naval Academy. Shout out to Dean Castillo. He was next to me in my locker. I was crying in my locker because I couldn't figure out how I was going to get through this whole writing thing. And he was like, yeah, just come by my room. I'll edit your papers. So I would write like 3/4 of a page. He would take it, make it like a page and a half. This is back in the early 90s when there wasn't no like font set or nothing like that. I'd make it like 35 font, turn in like big kid writing pages, and I got by. And then my sophomore year, probably the biggest thing to happen to me at Naval Academy, I had the first female special operations diver in the history of the Navy as my leadership teacher. And she was awesome. She's an all-American swimmer from Florida. Um, she wore these Laura Ingalls dresses, which was really out of place at Naval Academy, right? She wasn't an officer, still an officer. She just like taught leadership. And so one day I came in, man, I was sitting next to my buddy Grover Favors, and there's an overhead, and I read and I read and I read and I read, and I was like, golly, man, read. And I was like, I said, hey, Grover, man, I finished the overhead. He was like, what? And he knew I couldn't read. He was one of my boys, and he was like, what is that? I was like, that's the first time ever, man. So we were kind of like jiving about it. And then after class, she's like, hey, midshipman third class Zweig, I need to talk to you. So I was like, oh man, I've been in a lot of trouble at this point. Like I didn't conform at all. Like I didn't conform, not one bit. So I'm like, man, I ain't do nothing in her class. So she's like, hey, you got third period free tomorrow. I need to see my office. I said, ma'am, can I ask you what happened? She's like, no, we'll talk about it when you come to my office. So I went to her office. Just picture, any professor's office in America, dark oak cabinets with tons of books and a desk light. Like she just had a desk light on. Like I was going to interrogation basically. And she's like, Miss Shipman, sit down. And so I sat down and she's like, listen, I'm gonna cut the shit right here. You can't read. And so I had this rehearsed speech, like, oh, I can read. How'd I get to the Naval Academy? They wouldn't let somebody in here that couldn't read. Are you crazy? Have you seen my GPA? Da 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 da. So she just sat there and listened to the whole thing. And then she was like, hey, she's like, the overhead that was on the board yesterday? And I knew she got me, right? Like I was like, oh man. And she was like, 150 words took the average midshipman 30 seconds to read. It took you 11 minutes and 30 seconds to read. And then I just kind of I started crying. I said, please don't tell anybody. She's like, it's okay. She said, I, I, I was almost, it was almost unbelievable when I was thinking that you couldn't read. And I was like, let me do some research before I confront this young man about not being able to read. And so she went and met with every teacher I had and called my teachers at prep school. And she said the same thing. Everybody says the exact same thing. You sit in the front row, you take a ton of notes, you never turn in homework, and you get mid 80s on every test. I said, yes, ma'am. She said, what happened? And so I told her the story I told you guys. Well, I told her basically what happened. The first through third grade, I had the same teacher. I was really obnoxious because my last name is Z. I sat in the back of class. My dad put a refrigerator box in class. So I sat in a refrigerator box for the first three grades, first through third. And I just take my book out on all the English tests and take my book out and just copy the spelling words and all that stuff. So that's what the genesis was. So anyway, long story short, like she was like, look, it's okay. I know you're really smart. You can't read. We got to learn how to read. And so they had a speed reading class at Christmas. So at Naval Academy, they have these things called Christmas classes that start the last day of finals and run all the way until the first semester. And so she's like, if you take this class, I'll give you a B in my class. And I was like, I'm in. Now, whatever you do, don't tell nobody. So I took that class and I got a couple of really good friends. And like, shout out to TT Howard. Um, like, if I call her and talk to her, she'll be like, every now and then she'll bring up, like, hey, man, let's go. She'll say, let's go to learn how to read class. And she said there was like, I don't know, 35 people in there, and they would just come and laugh because you had to read out loud and it was bad. So, but the good thing, I learned how to speed read in that month and a half. And now reading is one of my strong suits. I still can't write, but between my roommate Bo Shap and Chat GPT, like it's gonna work out just fine. So
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that story. I know, like you mentioned several times, you're like, don't tell nobody, don't tell buddy. And you're telling people today because you never know, like, you're not alone. There's a lot of people that might have the same similar story. So thank you for sharing that. It's very,
absolutely, Lisa.
very inspirational. Okay, so something else you said in that, intro of yours was that you would have preferred to have been a Green Beret in an Army Ranger versus Navy SEAL. Can you break that down for me?
So I grew up on Fort Lewis, Second Ranger Bat. like that's who I grew up with. The A team, all them dudes were Green Berets, right? So like there was never once was like, oh my God, I'm being Navy SEAL. No, it was just like, oh, I'm gonna go do the job, right? I'm gonna go be a commando. And so the commando aspect was more important than being a Navy SEAL to me. Doing the job was more important to me than saying, oh, I'm a Navy SEAL, right? And it never, like, even when I was in the SEAL teams, it was the best job I've ever had. Okay. It just it wasn't being a SEAL, which was cool. It was actually doing the hard work and doing the job, right? Like, so for me, like my dream would have been to go back to Ranger, like to the Ranger bat. So I wanted to go to Ranger school, which is not the Ranger bat, but I was going to go to Ranger school in the SEAL teams and I tore my hamstring, so I couldn't go. But like, I would be more proud to wear like a Ranger shirt than a Navy SEAL shirt. And it's just because, like, literally, I bought a tab for Second Ranger bat in like second grade at the PX with Mr. Harris, and like I've had it. It's in my gear locker right now. So that's just something that was around since second grade, first grade. It just, I mean, that's what I wanted to do, and it didn't happen, but I got the consolation prize of being a Navy SEAL. So
Hey, it's still impressive. Don't knock it. There's a lot of people that cannot have not been what you have been through. And so I just want to say, thank you for your service right off the bat. So I think it's impressive, whatever, special forces, anybody who serves. So um, don't knock it. I think it's a really still a very important position.
absolutely, absolutely.
Mhm. So going back to Navy SEAL selection, and you have to go through a lot of grueling physical things such as buds. There's psychological tests. Can you talk a little bit about that selection process and what really separates somebody out from becoming, a Navy SEAL?
So Lisa, it's interesting. I I think you're gonna hear a lot of people's chicken and egg, right? You're either made to be a Navy SEAL or you're not. And I'm kind of in that, like, you either have the background that you need to be successful in the SEAL teams or you don't. You're not going to get to SEAL training and find it. And so that the number one factor is grit, right? How much adversity, how much unstable household you lived in. Like, one of the number one factors of success in special forces across the board, all countries, every service, is how dysfunctional was your family. If you come from a dysfunctional family, you're going to have a high likelihood of succeeding if you have a lot of grit in your background.
Mm.
So the selection process is basically an exposure. It's going to expose whether or not you have grit. And for me, it was a pretty unique experience. I got a great video over on my channel, about the meat grinder and my experiences at SEAL training. Um, I was the first Black officer to graduate in 9 years from SEAL training. So there have been 13 African American officers before me, and none of them made it. I am loud and I don't care. So we broke the instructors in every phase. I ended up being a class leader 3 weeks into class because the five people ahead of me had either quit or dropped out. And so, my goal was to break the instructors, and we broke the instructors in every phase. And if you're gonna break Navy SEAL instructors, that means you just got to be um, absolutely just crazy and basically just, I mean, like, what we did basically was just talk shit to them all day. Like, you can't break us. And so they would be beating us at the end of the day. And I'd be like, hey, man, how long you gonna keep us out here, man? It's Friday night. Oh, man, I bet you won't keep us until 11 o'clock. It was like 5 in the afternoon, right? Like, I bet you won't keep us till 11. And so we would break them. And they'd be like, man, what is wrong with you guys? And I'm like, we don't care, man. We're in SEAL training. Like, we'll stay out here all night. Like, and so it exposes weakness. And I tell people, a lot of guys go there with the idea that being a Navy SEAL would be cool, but there is zero part of the job that is cool. None of it is. Getting to the actual mission normally is cold, wet, and sandy. Doing the mission is like, we want to operate in the pouring rain, cold. Okay. You're never comfortable. We just spent 20 years fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq. the absolute polar ends of the spectrum. You're minus 30 degrees up in the Hindu Kush, or you're down low and it's 120 degrees, you know? So all of that stuff is factored into SEAL training to expose whether or not you have grit and you have the ability to not quit. So the training is broken into three phases. You got the first phase, which is really just a complete beatdown. It includes the infamous Hell Week, which I thought was legitimate, but you don't have to pass anything. So it kind of makes it easy from that standpoint. Second phase is highlighted by an event that takes 50% of your class away. And that's pool comp, which is 5 tests that you have to do underwater with scuba gear on. And they beat you up and they take the scuba gear off and you got to put it back on the right way. And they're beating you up the whole time. And 50% of the class doesn't pass it and they're gone. So, and then third phase, you got a lot of safety violations and weapon stuff. So, the first time you pick up a gun is in third phase of training. And then now, so when I went through, you got done with third phase, you graduated from Buds. It was a big deal. You went to your SEAL team. You were on probation for about a year and a half, and you had to go to SQT there, which is the SEAL qualification training. But now the SEAL qualification training is rolled into the end of training. So Buds went from being roughly 10 months long to now being 2 years long. And even in SQT, after you graduate from basic underwater demolition school, there's still about 15 to 20% attrition at the next level because now they're teaching you skills that you're going to walk. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're going to walk, run, and then do it in the dark. And so that progression happens really fast in the SEAL teams. And that's one of the things that allows wrestlers to do so well. They're teaching you a new move. You got to be able to practice a new move, practice a little bit, and then be able to go do it. So, and then once you graduate from SEAL training, you get your trident, the bird with the gun, the anchor, and the flintlock pistol. And then you report to your SEAL teams, and then you're a new guy, and it starts all over again.
So when you were going through all of that, how did you deal with the no quit mentality when other people around you were quitting?
I'm gonna say this. So college wrestling is 10 times harder than any day of SEAL training. And to me, SEAL training was a lot of fun. Like it just was. Like you get to pee on yourself, you can beat people up. There's like this level of savagery that you live to every day that makes it really fun. If you're the right type of person, it is a really fun environment to be in. Does it suck? Yes. Like getting up in the morning at 2:50 in the morning, like that was the hardest part of the day. Every day for me was just waking up at 2:50 and starting my day. And but I cut it down. I started my day in 30 seconds. Like 30 seconds. I brushed my teeth, shaved real quick. I grabbed all my clothes, ran outside naked, slid down this fire light pole, got in formation, would get dressed in formation while all my officers were gathering around, and then we would run down to the beach to do the SIROPS report. And I got it down to the point where like once I woke up, like I didn't have time to think about anything else because the first couple of days I woke up like 10 minutes early, man, and that was the worst 10 minutes of my whole day. So the no quit mentality, like I said, like you either show up with it. It's not like there's some people that say they develop it there, but a lot of guys push it one event at a time. Let me just get through this event. Let me just get through this event. And I never really thought about it that way. It was just, I knew the whole schedule because I was running the class. And so for me, it was like, okay, we got boats, we'll go do boats. And then I just focus on where I was at the time, be where your feet are. So
Okay. So you said that individuals that came from like dysfunctional families tend to do well because they're used to maybe that chaos. I've also heard that like, you can't judge a book by its cover as far as like just because somebody's big and strong, they could be the first one called out and maybe overestimate or underestimating like the little small guy who may have been bullied his whole life, but then he turned that into an advantage.
100%. 100%. So I had a 6'6", 240-pound dude from Alaska. I wish I could remember his name because I would shoot a podcast with him, man. This dude was Zeus. His abs they looked like soda cans. Like no lie. Like I was like, God, just a huge, and he was from Alaska. So I never really talked to him that much because he was in, like, I'm a short dude, I'm 5'7". So he was way down the line in the tall guys, right? Like I'm in the Smurf crew. He's at the other end, like 14 boat crews away. So I never really communicated with him that much. Um, but he was just like, I mean, I'm like, he's from Alaska. He's got to be tough, right? Like you just, and then the dude quit, man, quit in Hell Week. And he wanted to be free like the dolphins. I'll never forget it, man. Middle of the night, we were freezing to death, and he's like, "Man, there was some dolphins. The marine mammal program is right there, so the dolphins are there." And he was like, "I want to be free like the dolphins," and he just walked off. And the instructor was like, "Why don't you come with me?" And he was like, "I just want to be free." Free like the dolphins. I was like, oh my God. But yeah, you can't. And then I had a Buddhist monk in my class, man. Dan Brown grew up in a Buddhist monastery, wasn't allowed to compete, like everything. There was no competition in his life ever. He wasn't allowed to hit nobody with a dodge. It was the craziest thing. I got a big podcast on that one too, because I didn't know his backstory. I went to school with his cousins, so I when I got the buds, like I got told that, hey man, my cousin's gonna be with you. But other than that, like that dude didn't even work out when he got there. Like he tore his bicep and was like he had to gut through doing pull-ups. Like he said he was jumping off the ground to do the pull-ups, and there's is a crazy story. But like
Mhm.
there's a guy that showed up, didn't know what he was getting into, didn't swim before he got there, and managed to graduate from SEAL training, you know? So there's a bunch of ends of the spectrum, and in the middle of it is a kind of like about an 80% group of just savages.
Yep, yep. And it's definitely there to test and expose your weaknesses. And I know that along the way, there is psychological tests, right? Do you have like written ones that can tell if you are able to handle the job and also, come back from the job? Is there ways for them to measure that, to look at that?
So they got a bunch of psychological tests, right? And they're really looking for team players. But I tell people, I can't tell you what your experience of SEAL training is going to be, but the devil's going to show up and he's going to test you. And I say it just like that. Like I got tested in drown proofing. I couldn't float. I was very dense. And so like it was a struggle for me. And then I found this rhythm. I would count 1, 2, 3, breathe. And I, up until the day before the test, like I had to get rescued every time we took the practice test. Like they had to rescue me. And then on the test, I started. My whole goal is not timed. You just go as slow as you want to. And I started traveling, man, and my vision started coming in. And so I know what that is. Like I'm gonna black out, man. And so I would breathe and it was doing this accordion effect. And I swam. And so your hands and feet are tied up. Your hands behind your back and your ankles are tied up. And you kind of porpoise like this through the water, but I sink. So that meant on the float, when everybody else was just floating around for 5 minutes, I'm swimming around, burning my energy, burning my oxygen. And so I went down and I started seeing it, and you got to do a flip, and then you come back. And as I was coming back, man, it started getting real narrow. So at the end, you have to go down, you do a front flip, you do a back flip, you grab the mask, and then you come to the side. Well, I had to skip the front flip and the back flip because I'm like, I'm getting ready to pass out. Like it was getting really narrow. So I got the mask, and then I got to the surface, and you can't breathe because the mask is in your mouth. And so I kicked off the bottom. Last thing I remember, like legitimately being able to see, I saw the bottom as I kicked off the bottom and headed towards the wall. Like I kicked at an angle. And then as I was going to the surface, everything was black. But I remember hitting the surface, but I couldn't see anything. And I remember telling myself to go turbo. I was like, turbo. And so I was in my mind, I was kicking as fast as I could. But my two dudes I played football with, they said like I came up and I kicked like 2 times and then I kind of went limp. And they reached in, Clint Bruce reached in and grabbed me by my ear and pulled me to the side of the pool. And then they pulled me out and then they held my arm up and they said, Zweig, okay. And Clint imitated my voice and the instructors didn't catch it. So I passed. Um,
Wow.
but I tell people, like, you're
People
going to see
die.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, two dudes died in the class behind me,
Mm-hmm.
both in that same swimming pool. And
Mm-hmm.
so it becomes really real. and I had seen a bunch of dudes pass out up until that point. Like you seeing guys pass out in the pool probably pretty regularly. Um, but it wasn't until pool comp where they're beating you up in the water in the second phase that I saw a
Yeah.
couple dudes getting real CPR.
Hmm.
And we just had two guys die behind us, like about that same time. So it was like, you're like, man, but I'm gonna tell you this: you get to the SEAL team, someone dies every month.
And how did the families get a payout? Like what happens with those liabilities?
Everybody has SGLI, which I don't know what it stands for, but it's life insurance. So it's pretty reasonable, like 32,000 for $500,000 of coverage. Um, the SEAL teams look after the Gold Star families.
Mm-hmm.
So, we lose a lot of dudes in training, parachute accidents, diving accidents,
Mm-hmm.
car rollover accidents, stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't want to say they're taken care of for life, but like once you become a Gold Star family, there's a bunch of organizations that are gonna pay for your kids' college and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
definitely in a better place today than, the Vietnam vets, no doubt.
1,000%.
Hmm.
1,000%. Yeah.
So let's talk about your deployments. Can you share any stories or anything
So
with
so
that?
let me preface this by saying I don't have any combat.
Okay.
Okay. But I got shot in high school.
Oh my.
So I got some high school gunfights. But no, SEAL wise, I don't have anything monumental. I did
Okay.
half a deployment, got fired because my boss was a complete loser. He had
Mm,
been fired already, but I at that point, like I had enough of let's just say the divide between the color of my skin and my performance. And
mm.
so I got into Michigan Business School and I just decided it was time to go. So
Oh,
I
okay.
left the SEAL teams. I have one deployment on a ship where I boarded a couple boats as the
Mhm.
boarding officer. And then in the SEAL teams, I went to the Mediterranean and did some FID missions with Spain and Malta, but that was it. I don't have some glorious Navy SEAL career. My mark that I've left in the SEAL teams is pretty much like I got about 5 to 7 guys in every SEAL class right now. And so I have had that for probably the last, I'd say maybe 15 years, 2010, it really started rolling. I
Mhm.
had onesies before that, but then 2010, like it really started rolling. So
Okay.
now we have a whole program. I got a bunch of Green Berets. Like I got 15 Green Berets. I probably got 250 pilots between the Navy, the Air Force, and the Marine Corps. So, if you add my mark wasn't made in combat, my mark is made on all the young men and women that I've helped
Your
be
legacy.
successful.
Hmm.
Yeah, and here's the big deal. Like a lot of the stuff that I was facing in the SEAL teams was driven by me, meaning I'm from Washington State and my dad did 4 years in prison for murdering his first wife. My
Hmm.
stepdad did. And so like as you can imagine, there wasn't a lot of BS in my house, man, and we didn't put up with BS. And so, I wasn't taught the proper way to deal with confrontation. My way to deal with confrontation is to take the front teeth out your mouth and beat the shit out of you. And so,
Hmm.
when cats are calling you the N-word and you're trashing them as an officer in the military, more people want to test you. And so I didn't lose. But the result is now they know, oh man, you can get under their skin by giving them some racial hazing. You know what I mean? So all of my dudes that are in now are murdering it. We call it racial judo. So if you say something crazy racist to me, I just flip it around on you and say, hey man, it's glad to know who the bigots are. And I use their first name. Hey John, glad to know who the bigots are, man. Really appreciate it. And all of my dudes are having a different experience. Not one of my dudes is like, man, it sucks, Jake. And that, like, I'm the most proud of that right there. I might have had a crazy ass wild experience, but now my guys are just able to serve, kick butt, have great careers, and then, they're making decisions for the right reasons and they're doing a great job serving the country.
Awesome, awesome. That's really cool. Okay, so let me ask you about some of the famous SEALs that maybe, just like the average civilian knows. There's a couple names out there like Marcus Luttrell. He's kind of got that Hollywood angle, a movie made about him. There's other ones like
You,
Jocko.
Lisa,
Um,
the movie's not true, right?
okay, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about that because I heard something in the news like he seemed a little bit like surprised. They just said, "We got a book for you now. You're going to go on tour," and they might have fabricated some of the storyline.
Oh, he came out and said the whole thing is bad. Like I knew what happened. Obviously, I got a phone call when he was on the run. Like the 12 hours after the whole thing fell apart, one of my boys called me. It's like, "Yo, you ain't gonna believe this." And they have some. I'm not gonna tell you what they have, but they have video evidence of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I don't imagine they'll ever release it,
Mm-hmm.
but they saw him running away in the middle of it. And
Mm-hmm.
so he came on, I think, was it Rogan? Whatever podcast he came on, he talked about it,
Mm-hmm.
right? He said, "Hey, man, I threw my gun down. I ran away." And when the
Mm-hmm.
Rangers found all his equipment, like it had all his magazines and stuff in there, here's what I'm going to tell you. I don't judge no man that's getting shot at and saw all his buddies get killed. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not here to judge what he did or what happened. And I'm not here to judge how it affected him. I mean, the dude got shot twice, had a broken leg, like he was messed up when it was going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think the Navy tried to take a situation and use it for its benefit, which it
Mm-hmm.
did. I mean, the Marcus Luttrell and the American Sniper movie probably helped recruiting more than anything else in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, like he did good. You know what I'm saying? His brother, who was a Navy SEAL, is a congressman.
Mm-hmm.
He's living with demons. Like I had said this a long time ago. Like, shout out to Marcus Luttrell for being able to
Mm-hmm.
come clean on all his stuff because it's only so long you can live with them demons.
Yep.
We have a big problem with self-harm in our community and across special forces. And so,
Yep.
I'm glad he's kind of lifting those burdens off his shoulders and he's able to live free.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, that dude's a killer, man. He kicked butt and he had a bad situation turn into a worse situation, by the Navy, kind of exacerbating all of his success and all of that. But
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Yeah, they had an opportunity, like you said, to kind of address the mental and emotional aftermath of being a combat soldier, and they just glossed over it and just made it, like a Hollywood heroic story when they could have given a truer representation and a better, education to the public that, think that y'all are superhuman and invincible and versus no, this is real people, real trash. I mean, not trash, but real like demons that they have to deal with.
Demons, like real demons. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna tell you this, Lisa. Hegseth is doing a great job. So they're gonna bring in psychedelics. So there's a couple things that a lot of our community have been doing. So there's a psychedelic lab or an MDMA lab, and they're resetting your brain. I want to tell everybody on this podcast, I have a brain PDF. So if you email me, my bot will send you the brain PDF, and it's a brain health management deal for football players, anybody with CTE or concussion problems. Like it's how to repair your brain. Um,
PTSD.
Everything. Yeah, I don't. So here's what I'm gonna say about PTSD. I don't think it's PT. Well, let me say this. I know it's not PTSD. It is traumatic brain injury that you're not healing that
Mm-hmm.
then changes the composition of your brain. And now you start having psychological problems with PTSD.
Mm-hmm. Have you heard of
So,
complex PTSD?
complex.
Complex
Hmm.
PTSD is what like begins in childhood, and it's like all of the stressful things they just get accumulated over time, and that's probably why kids with complex PTSD may do well in military combat and so forth because they're carrying that with them.
So,
Um,
so Lisa, let me say this, okay? My boy Shrek says it best. I don't have PTSD because I don't have PTSD,
because
right?
that's a one single event, right?
No, 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 no. So here's what I would say about complex PTSD. That's some crap that some people have made up to allow somebody in their 20s to blame something that happened when they were 6 years old on their why they're having problems at 20,
No,
right?
I agree. It's like you
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
ask for it, but it's your job to resolve it as an adult.
Yeah, my thing is like if you're worrying about something that happened 10 years ago, I
Mm-hmm.
don't care what it was, then you have to come to grips with the fact that you got to let it go. and
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the things that we have going on right now in our country. We're trying to glorify problems when I was 6, right? Glorified physical abuse, sexual abuse when I was 6. Listen, man, you gotta get over it, right? Like I complex. If you tell me complex PTSD and you tell me I'm going back to first grade and I'm gonna relive some stuff, I'm gonna be like,
Mhm.
look, why am I trying to engage on some stuff that happened in my case, 45 years ago?
Mhm.
All I'm doing is allowing it to stay in my brain and rent space in my brain,
Mhm.
right? Um, I think you are the sum of your experiences, but at the
Mhm.
end of the day, like that's one of those things that I kind of push back on because I'm just like, no, man, like I was having problems in 2017. I did everything in the brain PDF that I have. There's a book in there where most of the stuff came from. And now I'm living a great life, right? Like I haven't slurred a single word on this podcast. I haven't struggled to get a word out.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sitting here worried about my family in jeopardy up in the house and having anxiety and all this stuff that was happening in 2017. But at the end of the day, none of it was mental. It was all physical
Mhm.
brain tissue problems with CTE, playing football, being around a lot of concussive blast syndrome. All of that stuff had accumulated. But I went to the Cleveland Clinic and I learned that at 42, your lungs' ability to produce oxygen drops below the threshold to repair your brain every night. And so one of the big things in the brain PDF is oxygen treatment in the morning and night. I do the oxygen treatment, man, I'm back to 25.
Mhm.
Now I got to do a bunch of self-care stuff to maintain it, but that's a lot better than having, dementia at 53 years old.
Mhm.
So that's why I
Yeah,
say like I'm not real big, Lisa, on the
like dwelling on
like
the past and going into those
yeah.
spaces because you can get stuck for sure.
Yeah, it's like a OODA loop, right? Like you just
Mhm.
you.
Yep.
I tell people like the worst thing you can do, and I experienced this when I was in the SEAL teams, and I had the bad officer, and I was in my own head, and it was just constantly like the same thoughts just going around and around. And now I know through Al-Anon, so I go to Al-Anon, and I know like I can't control it. I didn't cause it. Don't worry about it. Let it go.
Mhm.
You
Yep.
know.
Yep. And also, you mentioned the psychedelics like mushrooms as part of treatment because it might
Mm-hmm.
be rewiring the brain in a way to help
Mm-hmm.
people overcome, traumatic events and
Yep.
PTSD.
Yep, absolutely. So there's like I'll talk about the PDF a little bit. Okay, so oxygen treatment. So
Mhm.
if you Google Live O2, you can see it, but you can build it for $300. You ain't got to pay $4,000 for it.
Mhm.
You build it for $300. You Live O2, 6 minutes in the morning, 6 minutes at night, puts 400% oxygen into your brain. It's it's studies after studies have proven it cures like 200 different diseases and problems, lowers the inflammation in your body, but what it really does is it provides your brain enough oxygen to repair itself.
Mhm.
Um, Float tank. So float tank disconnects the two hemispheres of the brain and allows them to reconnect. Takes all the sensories away from your body, and then it allows your brain to reconnect and rebuild the synapses in the two halves of the brain. A bunch of stuff. There's so one of the problems with special forces guys, our cortisol level is pegged. So we're walking around at like 5.8 out of 6. A normal person has zero cortisol level, and we're walking around basically pegged out. Well, there's some stuff called sleep tonights, which are a herbal medicine from China that take all the cortisol out of your system. You take one in the morning, one at night. Making sure you cut out the sugar. Like sugar is super inflammatory, causes a bunch of problems. So we try to limit the amount of sugar. Um, I'm on HGH right now. So HGH is like the super kind of performance enhancing drug because it allows your cells to divide. And then the other big one is red light. So now they just approved red light for the Navy, for VA. They're talking about psychedelics. The next thing we got to get them to understand is HGH and how beneficial it is to long-term health care for brain repair. But the red light, so the red light, 500 studies have proven it helps your cells divide 5 times faster. I have a hat I put on my head every night. I used to do it 3 times a week, but then I got this new hat and I have found that if I do it every night, like I'm
Mhm.
super sharp.
Mhm.
So like I put it on, it's for 30 minutes. It's a baseball cap, got a bunch of lights on it. All that stuff's in the PDF. With some other stuff. The book is in there. There's a book out there. Shout out to the Concussion Repair Manual, we got a lot of the stuff from there. And so when I say we, it was a group of me and some strength coaches at the University of Illinois that were all having kind of some cognitive decline. And two of them had played in the NFL for a bunch of years. And so we like started working on this stuff like sauna. I got a sauna at my house. I sit in a sauna for 30 minutes. I try to take a cold plunge. I don't like it, but
Mm-hmm.
I get in the shower after the sauna. I go in the swimming pool. The swimming pool is pretty cold right now. Um, but all of that is in the PDF to
Mm-hmm.
try to explain to people and help them understand, like, look, man, your problems aren't mental, they're physical. And
It's in the body.
if you address the physical brain problems, you'll be shocked how all your problems will go away. Like all
Mm-hmm.
the like anxiety is a big one in the SEAL community. Anxiety, which is you're like, how can you have it? It's like, well, your brain's messed up and you're trying to save everybody. And like I mean, I had a panic attack in 2017. I was going to the VA for a mental health evaluation, and I had a panic attack on the side of the freeway. I had to pull over and was shaking and sweating. Just I was like, what is happening? And that was 2017. And that summer, I got to Illinois, and I got hooked up with these other dudes that had a problem. We started addressing the issue.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just grew and grew and grew. And so I put this PDF together because like we got to get the word out there to the veterans, football players, soccer players, guys that have been in car crashes and just had a hard time with kind of post-traumatic brain injury and then mental health problems associated with those.
Mm-hmm. That is so good. I'm glad you are addressing that and making it available to people. And if anybody is struggling, they should definitely check out your resource on that. Okay, so let me ask you about one other Navy SEAL before we move on, and that's David Goggins. What are your thoughts on him?
Dave Goggins killing it. My man making $40 million a year. Like, what can you say? Like, cats, in the SEAL community, everybody be pissy about, oh, he ain't got a bunch of combat. And I'm like, look, man, dude been out the Navy for 15 years. Okay. He making $40 million a year. It's $750,000 for a 10-minute keynote speech. Okay. I don't care what he's doing, he's murdering it. All
Yeah.
right. Murdering it. He doing so well. I mean, how can you want any ill will on that dude? And he ain't doing nothing but motivating people,
Yes.
who's gonna carry the boats?
Yes.
So like
Yep.
it's funny, the video you watched that made you call me. Um, Everybody's asked, "Where's David at? Where's David at?" I'm like, "He's carrying the boats." Like I just cut and paste the answer in because it'll be like every fifth comment. Where's David Goggins? Dave Goggins, great dude, man. He just out there
Yep.
killing it, man.
Yep.
So
For those who haven't read his book, You Can't Hurt Me, and never finished, I highly recommend them. They're excellent. His story's excellent. But it is interesting amongst the Navy SEAL community and the drama that's being played out to the public, like David Goggins versus Dan Crenshaw and that whole
listen,
debacle.
listen. Let me tell you something. I'm gonna let you behind the curtain a little bit,
Okay.
Lisa. The Navy SEALs, without a doubt, have the most toxic culture of any culture I've ever experienced. Okay. NFL locker room, college locker rooms, college wrestling rooms, any environment I have been in, the Navy SEALs are 100 times more toxic. I think two reasons. One, they're very immature. So most SEALs are young, sub 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And then two, they can't help themselves wanting to be the best. So
Mm-hmm.
they operate like crabs in a barrel. They don't want to see anybody get out the bucket. So they pulling people back down instead of helping people get out. And I've seen it for 30 years now. They hate me, but they hate me. Okay. I laugh at them. You can hate me all you want. I don't really care. I'm 53 years old, been out for 24 years now. I was a Navy SEAL for a small part of my life, and I never identified as a Navy SEAL. Okay. So, like, if you're gonna judge me on something I did for 3 years, that's fine. Cause I know I'm shoving these recruits down your neck sideways. So you should be like, well, damn, this dude didn't so much for the community, but they hate me too, right? Like they hate the fact that I'm loud. They hate the fact that I'm not afraid to address some racial issues. They hate the fact that I was really good in the SEAL teams, and they know that, and they hated it. I grew up hunting, fishing, and shooting. I shot as well as my chief did from Dev Group. Okay. Nobody liked that. Well, how'd you learn how to shoot? Why don't you have a compass and land now? I don't need a compass. I grew up in the woods. Okay. So all of that stuff, like for David and your boy Crenshaw getting drunk texting at night, like it just is what it is, right? Like you're a U.S.
Mhm.
congressman,
Mhm.
I have a saying, wolves don't talk to the sheep, be a congressman. What are you worried about David for?
Mhm.
So, and
Yeah,
it's
it seemed
always,
a little petty, kind of what was taking place
yeah,
there.
right. Like what are we doing?
It made for
I'm
good clicks and new followers, and maybe that is somewhat of the game, I guess, for some of them.
so I'm in a Kabul with a bunch of special forces dudes. We WWE it all the time. If Joe said he's going this way, I'm gonna go that way on a different video, right? But I think that's different than having a personal attack on somebody. Like, I'm not attacking nobody because they're successful. I'm
Hmm.
just not. Like if you're
Yep.
successful, and if you're grimy, like, there's the Army Ranger dude in Congress right now that voted against the pedophile bill, right?
That is
Like
grimy.
if you're gonna be a grimy dude, like you got to be willing to pay the grimy consequences,
Hmm.
So, and that's not my job to police anybody. I'm over here in my little wheelhouse, in this little studio trying to make the world better. I'm going to talk tomorrow in Houston. I told you I'll be over in your town tomorrow. I'm speaking at the Lone Star Flight Museum to a bunch of high school kids and college kids. And we're going to pump up some aviation. My man Xavier runs the Prairie View flight program for Prairie View University. So I'm going to go over there and we're going to talk about how you want to fly. This is what you got to do. You want to
Awesome.
be successful as a young person. This is what you got to do. So,
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so let me ask you a question because just from your military experience and an opinion on some of the terrorist, domestic terrorism that we have to worry about in the United States,
mhm.
what can your average civilian do or should be aware of that doesn't have like a military mindset or background?
So here's the two things I'm going to tell you. Two things. You better be carrying some form of first aid. I would prefer tourniquets. Okay. Second thing, the number one thing you can do is take your earphones out and you put your cell phone away when you're in public.
Mm,
The example I'm going to use, the terrorist up in New York City drove 6 miles down the running path on the West Side Highway, and everybody had headphones in. No one heard him coming. And he just ran over all the runners on the running path in a U-Haul truck. If you got your earphones in and you're looking at your phone,
mm-hmm,
you setting yourself up for failure.
mm-hmm,
I know right now it's kind of funny because prior to the election, there was a lot of talk being talked about from Sarah. So Sarah's on Sean Ryan's podcast. She does a bunch of
mm-hmm.
open source searches and like intelligence gathering.
Yeah.
Supposedly there's 1,500 terrorists in United States that are going to do active shooters, and they're going to try to kill 60,000 people. I
And not just
strongly
single shooters. This is going to be like mass shooters.
So if you Google the Mumbai attacks in India,
Mm-hmm,
so it's super awesome from a bad perspective. They shoot a couple people, put their guns away, they run in the crowd, they run a couple blocks, they shoot 10 or 15 more people, they put their guns away, they run in the crowd, and they just keep doing that until finally they get caught up with. The problem is they're moving. They're not staying, like they're not setting up somewhere so they can converge on them. And like if you're on a train or you got a little scooter, I mean, you got one of them little zip scooters, you may be 4 miles away killing people and you're just bouncing all over the city. Now you have 10 of those people doing the same thing. Like it's bad. All
mm-hmm,
right. I would tell everybody, if you know how to use a gun, you better have a gun. Because the only way you stop bad guys with guns is have good guys with guns. Now,
mm-hmm,
that's for a kinetic people attack. I don't know what to tell you about chemical warfare, biological warfare / COVID, right?
Cyber.
Um, Yep. You ain't gonna do nothing about cyber. The country got to do something about cyber. But like from my perspective, I have a bunch of antibiotics here, right? I have a bunch of HGH. So if one of my kids gets super low on the like they ain't able to come back, I'm gonna juice them with HGH, right? Like I'm gonna hit them with some stuff to boost their immune system. Um, but yeah, I tell everybody like situational awareness is the number one key that you could possibly have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, I'm not a big proponent of people that don't know how to use guns having guns, but you can't protect yourself from a guy with a gun without a gun.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I don't mean to fearmonger at all here, but they say
mhm.
that it's not if we're going to have another 9/11, it's when we're going to have another 9/11.
Yeah, and here's what I'm gonna say, and this I forgot, didn't make my point, okay, but let me make my point. Since Trump has been in office, the whole world is like, don't poke that bear. Okay. And so I had this conversation with my special forces buddies, and the question was, do they wait 4 years? Right? Do they wait until Trump comes out of office? Well, now it's 3 years, right? Do they wait the 3 years for Trump to come out of office? That's the question. And so I don't know. I don't know if they want to poke the bear,
Mm-hmm.
So they may just wait it out. But I know this is something to understand. Osama bin Laden's son is running the organization now. Osama bin Laden wanted to take 2 or 3 generations to win this war. So that was their goal. His
Mm-hmm.
son said, "I'm going to do it in my lifetime."
Where
So
is he?
that's
What country?
if we knew where he was at, he'd be
Oh,
dead.
oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So my guess is somewhere probably in Pakistan. I mean, he's somewhere in that general area, right? I know this. He ain't. Well, he might be in South Central, but I don't think
Mm-hmm.
so. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like that's the plan. And so it's going to get interesting.
Do you
But
think? Yeah, go ahead.
go ahead. No, you're good. Go ahead.
But do you think things like, like the Hamas attack, like being a dress rehearsal for more attacks, even here
Mhm.
in, lots of cities in the United States, that could happen?
So let me say this. I don't think Hamas thought that Israel was going to do what it did. So if you don't know, there is no more Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
Gaza has been leveled.
Mm-hmm.
It is a wasteland now, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And Hamas is a proxy for Iran. That's why this now we're Trump is talking to Iran. Like, look, we're gonna stop playing these games. Okay. So I think it's all a nebulous kind of deal with the terrorism on one side, and it's really not terrorism, it's just them wanting to have a caliphate and take over the traditionally Muslim lands that they've had, and the West not wanting them to do it because of oil. It's all based on oil. It's all money driven, oil driven.
Okay. So I mean, just as like your average citizen, being privy to like what's happening in the world because we have phones, we can go on TikTok, we can see real time. Um, you know, I'm just like wondering, is there anything that we could do like as citizens?
Um, I'll tell you this: be vigilant.
Just be
So,
vigilant.
be vigilant. I will say this: my guys that work in the business of stopping the bad guys have said, if you knew how many if you knew what happened on a daily basis, you'd pack up your family and leave America today. You would not even wait till tomorrow. And I was like, really?
You mean
And
here
he
on
said,
American soil, what they're
oh
doing
yes,
behind
yeah,
behind
we are stopping so much every day that it's unbelievable. And some of them, I mean, like there's still like 7 or 8 man-packed nuclear suitcases missing from the fall of Russia in like the 80s. Okay. There was word on the street that they had SA-7s. They were trying to shoot down Trump's airplane, and they had SA-7s running around America, right? Like that's a surface to air missile. We know they have SA-7s in Mexico because they shot down a couple of helicopters with them in
mm-hmm,
Mexico. So, you start putting all that together, like, yeah, it's real.
mm-hmm,
We have done a really bad job of being the nice kid on the playground. And so now we have pretty much most of the world that hates us because we put our nose into a bunch of stuff that we shouldn't be in. And I kind of commend Trump on pulling back our forward presence around the world and focusing on making us better as Americans. Because, like this whole thing with NATO, right? Like, there's no way I'd be in NATO. I'm not like you pay me to help you stop whatever's going on next war that happens. I'm not paying for you to not have a military. We're 7% of Europe's GDP. Think about that. The United States is 7% of their GDP.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're not healthy enough to do that. We're not healthy enough to continue to live, on debt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 36 trillion in debt. Not
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
nothing to brag about. I don't know what's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen when it becomes due because we keep on, keeps going up.
I'm in Texas. You're in Texas.
Yes.
We're going to be the Republic of Texas living a good life.
Yes, yes. Awesome. Well, thank you. I really do appreciate you coming on my channel today and talking about a variety of topics here. Do you have any final thoughts maybe you'd like to share with the audience?
You talk about perseverance. Life is hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this generation, the young kids, are missing the fact that you have to sacrifice to make life easier in the future. They want instant gratification. They want to win now, and they're not willing to work hard at anything. And the result is like we're starting to see some 30-year-olds that are completely dysfunctional and upset with life because they don't. And you're like, what have you done? And so I want all the young people out there to understand, like, if you don't give up and sacrifice when you're young, you got no chance to be successful when you're older.
Mm-hmm.
Because it only gets harder the older you get. Add 3 kids and a wife, you got real responsibilities now. You can't take
Mm-hmm.
care of yourself, or what I'm saying, buy a house and have a car and do all that stuff. Like, what happens when you have a kid and a wife? Like, it only compounds. So I challenge everybody out there to be more resilient, to sacrifice now for later, and then go read Rich Dad Poor Dad so you can be rich when you get older.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you, Jake. I appreciate you coming today and talking to my audience. And if you guys like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and leave a comment down below. And don't forget to check out Jake's YouTube channel. He's got a lot of great videos on there. He dives in a lot of different topics with regards to the military and leadership and veterans, and just a really good resource. So thanks again. I appreciate everybody watching. Thanks, Jake.
Thanks, Lisa.